Good evening, Malaysia and followers from around the world. Salam bahagia. Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin is now a caretaker prime minister, but no one candidate has come forward with a convincing majority. But as the power struggles and the horse trading are taking place, we mustn't let the politicians off. We must push for reforms now, or else it will never happen for Malaysia. It must not just be a case of changing the guard or changing the prime minister or changing the cabinet. This is a time for us to talk about reforms and taking Malaysia forward, resetting Malaysia, rebooting Malaysia. Tonight with me are my media comrades, Tan Sri Johan Jaaffar and Dr. Hussamuddin Yaacub. Welcome on board, sir.
Yeah.
We will start the conversation with just a quick recap from you gentlemen on what went wrong with Tan Sri Muhyiddin's administration. Please.
Tan Sri,
Johan?
What went wrong? That is
Yes.
$1 million question.
You're from Johor and more.
You see, this is a government that has been in the last one year, a few months, and this is the government that did not have the mandate of the people. We voted for a different government, you must remember, in 2018. But having said that, what has happened has happened. But I think there's a lot of issues pertaining to what actually happened over the last 1.5 years. But one important thing you must remember, Tan Sri Muhyiddin came in at a very, very difficult time. The pandemic came in at about the same time. These are difficult things that he have to make tough decision. I think one of the biggest problem that is faced by any country at that point is that, you see, you have to manage the political issue because you must also remember that he did not have the majority. And you must always remember that no government after 2018 will have a substantial majority as it was during the Barisan Nasional period. Now, number two, the pandemic is something that people did not expect it. I mean, we were kind of caught in a situation whereby we are not prepared for it. No country was prepared for it, and it was he has to make tough choices. And in doing so, I think there are few missteps along the way. My particular issue is about the communication aspect. I mean, the quality of the ministers that he had, and also the whole construct of how really to manage the economy. You see, that was at fault. So basically, those are some of the issues, the way I look at it.
Hussam?
basically, I think they have a very weak team.
Yeah.
Very weak team. But like what Tan Sri mentioned just now, I think their communication failed big time.
Yeah.
So I think because during this kind of situation, you need to be very upfront. And also I think the information must come real time. But I think Tan Sri himself only appeared during the last 1 or 2 months. Before that, he left everything to inexperienced ministers and or maybe a weak communication team. I think basically it's communication, it's marketing. I think Tan Sri himself, he's a good product. But I think Tan Sri, being Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin, he likes to take a back seat. That is his brand. So I think during this kind of situation, you must be there to really take charge and run the crisis like a war room.
Correct. Yeah. I think that I like to give my comments as well, because that he became a prime minister in a very unconventional way. His critics have said that he came through the back door. But of course, we can argue as well that it was Mahathir who opened the door for him. So the name of a backdoor government continued to stick with him for all his years, his short year and a half as Prime Minister. And as you two gentlemen say that the communications were not good because that the narrative was not there, the optics were not there. He tried to paint himself as Abba, but he was not a father that was well loved by many of his children. And the result was that it was made worse by the fact that his government, the cabinet was too big, and many of his cabinet members actually did not perform well. So when you take a back seat, your soldiers are not, your generals are not performing well. So it did not help him. So there were missteps all the way. The result was, in the mind of many people, it was an incompetent government. Although given the fact that he's someone who's actually, although he's someone who is very well trained, very experienced, and we know that he would have been a prime minister who would not embarrass Malaysia and Malaysians if he goes overseas. But because of the pandemic, the economy has gone down. People have lost their patience with him and his governments, especially his cabinet members, some of which did not perform well. So the result is that he has lost it, and he actually lost the plot and lost the government. Now, of course, every prime minister tried to leave a legacy. For him, probably that he wanted to vaccinate the country, at least 80%, get the economy going. And he thought that that would help him to continue, but of course, it did not help. He should have worked well with UMNO, but the quarrel with UMNO, it was UMNO who pulled the carpet or the rug under him. And it didn't help that there was this, what do you call it, the impasse with the royalty, which do not happen. Coming from someone from Johor, who knows how to handle the palace, I was quite surprised that he did not handle this matter delicately and well. Now, we have come to a point that the government is gone. Will we have another situation where we would have another minority government? It may even have a smaller minority, smaller numbers. What do you think, gentlemen?
You see, this is the fact that we have to accept. The way I look at it, Dato' Sri, the way I look at it is that we must always remember this is our experiment in true democracy. This is the whole democratic process, and we must learn from the Indonesian. What happened to Indonesia in 1997 when Suharto was ousted? It took them quite a number of years, probably about 10 years, for them to stabilize politically. You see, when Habibie came in, Habibie was a democratic person. There was a lot of things that he have done. I mean, giving new voice, for suddenly people realize that this is a new Indonesia, and people embrace his changes, his reform, and things like that. And he even have a moratorium for Timor-Leste. So that is something that shocked even Indonesian. So that is a kind of democracy that Habibie was trying to do. Of course, it's a sharp contrast with Suharto. And then when Gus Dur came, Gus Dur tried to give that meaning to the democracy. But of course, Gus Dur did not survive long. And then after that was Mergawati. But it was during SBY's era, you can see that there was some kind of some semblance of stability in Indonesian politics. You see, but another important issue is that over that many years, you can see that there is a lot of reforms being made. The old laws, the old provisions pertaining to politics and politicking has been looked into, and the Dewan Perwakilan Rakyat was empowered, and the press was freer, and that is one of the things. And you see, when Jokowi came in, Jokowi was basically riding on what the good things that have been done by his previous predecessor. He could last probably even longer if it has not been a new provision in the Indonesian law that you cannot be a president for more than 2 terms. But you see, but even then, when Jokowi took over, you see, and we can see that there is a lot of changes that are going on, and I guess Indonesia, from that perspective, is more stable now. So, are we going to wait for another 10 years or so for politics to stabilize? Or this is an experiment that is going on, a learning curve for every one of us, especially for politicians and political parties.
Husham, I want to ask you about the reforms that was promised by the Prime Minister before he resigned. Those reforms looks really good. Of course, many will say that it's a bit too late, and that there were attempts to talk to the DAP, and then the DAP had a conversation, and then they pull out, and that there were also others who say that it was an attempt to strike a deal with the DAP. They promised him support, and they told him that perhaps you should announce publicly all these reforms to show that you were sincere. And of course, after he announced it, there's now talk that the DAP, because of grassroots opposition, they decided that we pull it out. Those reforms actually are really good. Let's be honest, and let's be fair. The problem in Malaysia is that there's too much of this us and them, this very adversarial system of politics. Bipartisan is almost dead. But as Tan Sri Johan said, that it is time that we try new things. Bipartisanship is obviously something that we should do, because that would lead us to more mature democracy. If we look at the social media and the way supporters talk, it's really very crude. You know, sometimes it's maki-mamaki, but so there's a lack of clever in discussion, because your leaders are expected to take on your opponent. But bipartisanship allows a much more calmer way. Dato', what do you think of these reforms that was spoken by the Prime Minister, by the ex-Prime Minister, so to speak?
Okay, I think this is a golden chance for Malaysia to change. I think since Tan Sri Muhyiddin has paved this the way, have opened this subject, and I think as a businessman, I feel that it was a big mistake for the opposition for not taking up that offer. Because the way, maybe they are politicians, I'm not a politician. As a businessman, when there is a good offer that benefits a lot of people, I think you should continue to engage them and start to press for more concession. But anyhow, there is history. So I think now, with like what Tan Sri Johan mentioned just now, there is no party that is dominant. So I think this is the best opportunity for the king, for the rulers, for the Raja-Raja Melayu to press for reform. That means now, I think because what Tan Sri Muhyiddin offered is just on reform, I think it is very effective. That means political funding, no hopping, party hopping, and limitation for prime ministership and all those kind of things. I think if whoever wants to be the prime minister now, I think the king can give that as a condition. You have to implement this. And now I think since Tan Sri Muhyiddin with 100 ahli parliament with him have agreed for this. So I think whoever runs the country later, the rakyat kan, dulu you janji ni,
betul.
You must back this reform. So I think this is an opportunity. So that's why we are hoping, because especially for us, we are pushing Rasuah Busters, and Rasuah Busters punya agenda adalah untuk political reform,
betul,
party hopping semua, so that because the root cause of rasuah adalah these kind of things. So now I think this is an opportunity to eradicate rasuah. So I think the king must play his role. Put this as a condition. Okay? Sekarang since tak ada clear leader, all of you must come up together, form a unity government, appoint one PM who has no long-term agenda.
Johan, what is your view of these reforms?
It is important to remember that these reforms, some of the reforms that was mentioned by Tan Sri Muhyiddin, are actually those reforms that was promised by Pakatan Harapan during their manifesto. In their manifesto, it is as simple as that. See, Pakatan Harapan promised a lot of things. They were in the position to make sure that those reforms were looked into when they were in power, but unfortunately, it did not happen. You see, we were all disappointed because of that. We talk about the new dawn of Malaysian politics. And the new dawn of Malaysian politics is not to carry over the legacy of the 60 years of rule and the kind of the country that we went through. I mean, yes, there was a lot of progress. Malaysia, the Prime Minister have changed the skyline. We have a lot of things going on. We've become industrialized nation, you see, and we are on the verge, perhaps, if things would have been on the right track, it could have been a developed country by 2020. You see, but unfortunately, those reforms that was promised during the election in 2018 was not carried out. You see, and some were saying that basically these promises are not carved in stone. But basically the principle of those reforms must be looked into. And I think I agree with Dato' Usham. This is a golden opportunity and we have to do it. It is now or never. If we don't do it now, we can never get it done. You see, this is a golden opportunity. And I agree, if you were to put someone who is basically very, very ambitious, wanting to be the Prime Minister, we were going to have a bit of problem because they will be taking care of certain group of people. So if you put someone who have a short-term agenda, but the whole idea is basically to sort out all the problem that we are facing now as far as COVID-19 is concerned, to manage the economy well, and of course, to promise and to implement those reforms that have been promised, I think we are in a better shape. Just wait until the next election. So give this particular person a chance to make sure that the footing is right for the next general election.
I'd like to take this a step further because Tan Sri Muhyiddin, he still has got 100 over MPs. It's a very strong force. If he goes to the opposition, it is very strong. And assuming that they have some numbers and they form the government, they must stick to the promise of these reforms, whether they're in government or whether they're in opposition, because you have already announced it. And there's no reason why the other sides wouldn't stay away. If they decide not to support these reforms, it goes to show that they're not sincere in promoting reforms, which they have been talking about for a long time. And as they all said that in every crisis, there's an opportunity. And we really hope that the Malay rulers, knowing that both sides are really strong, and if you want to try new politics, I think the rulers today use the word new politics. I presume that there must be new ways, new politics will come in with new Malaysia. And these are the things we really need to cut down the unnecessary politicking. Because all this hopping, you result in politik rasuah, kan? And that if you have in place funding, anti-hopping, and that the 2 terms, then this would set the pace for us to be like Indonesia, where there's a real new dawn, not just longan kosong saja untuk suara-suara politik, untuk pilihan raya, but real things that will happen. And we must seize this because in 64 years, I think most of us who have covered a lot of elections, I've never heard of such progressive ideas being thrown around. We can say it's a bit late, but I think we need to push it, because if we do not push it, then it'll be lost. We must make it a point to actually force these politicians who wants to come into power, look, you must have it. Or not just because now that you're the Prime Minister, you have already forgotten, you want to stay around forever, which is the problem in Malaysia. Now, what's the difference between our time, of course, and the younger electorates now? The two gentlemen, how do young voters react to new things now? Johan?
You see, I subscribe to this idea about new politics, Dato' Sri Wong. You see, but my worry is the politician. It's not the politics. You see, we can talk about new politics. This is ideal. Everyone is looking into this. We have been talking about this. So we were hoping that 2018 would be a new marker in excellence on how politics should be embraced, but that did not happen apparently, and things got worse. You see, and because of that, there's a lot of disillusionment among the people, and especially the young. We understand because we have gone through this process. You see, we have been covering politics for a long time. We are veteran in this area. We understand. See? But what about the young? They were quite surprised. Then suddenly they see, Hey, what is all this shouting and calling names in parliament? It's supposed to be the August a place, is it?
Yeah.
And suddenly they were shocked. Is this what politicians do? Is it? It shocked them. So basically, as far as the young is concerned, we are not setting a good example to them. We are not saying this is the real politics that we want. You see, and when you talk about people who have been charged in court for billions of dollars of embezzlement or rasuah case or whatever, they were asking themselves, hey, what is happening to politics and to politicians and to the country, you see? So I think as far as the young is concerned, I think they will support this agenda. You know, they will support this agenda. You see, but unfortunately, without their voice, we must give them the voice. We must give them the voice. As I always quote this particular person that I admire a lot, Václav Havel, the president of Czech Republic. Give the power to the powerless, you see? And the powerless are the people. But you must also remember, people's power play a very important role. Who would ever imagine Suharto would fall? Yeah. And who would ever imagine, for instance, that Barisan Nasional would lose in 2018? Yes. Nobody could envision that, you see? Even the wildest dream, even we got it wrong. You know? We got egg on our face because we thought that they might scrape through, but they did not, you see? So what does that tell you? And if we empower the young will make the change.
Okay, Husham, I want to ask you this question because Johan mentioned about the shift in the last general election. In this country, the reality, because Malays make up 70% of the total population, in the last election, all it needed was a 25% shift and the government collapsed, the Barisan Nasional collapsed. Obviously, that the Malay votes are the most important because the Chinese population has shrunk and it will continue to shrink. And foreigners, there are more foreigners than Indians. That's a fact. So the Malay votes are the ones that matter. How are Malays reacting to this continued old politics untuk bangsa, negara dan agama? I mean, UMNO is still talking about this. They want to come back to power, and we can presume that this will be the same politics that they will continue to promote. But Malaysia is sinking. We have lost to Singapore long ago. We have lost to Vietnam at the rate we are doing. Indonesia is even more attractive and more progressive than Malaysia. We are falling behind and behind. If we continue the old politics, we will be in trouble. What is your view on this?
Okay, basically, you go back to 2018. The shift was caused by basically just one war cry by Tun Mahathir, Najib pencuri, Najib pencuri. And I think that shifted some of the Malays. But now I think with 17 months of suffering during COVID, I think the war cry of kerajaan gagal, I think has also shifted further. And I think with the opportunity of, like what Tan Sri Johan mentioned just now, sekarang, since next election, most probably, the only 18 people will come into picture. So I think because the suffering of the 18 months, and I think yang suffer paling banyak adalah the Malays. Because Malays tak ada saving. The Chinese, even though you don't have income 18 months, but most of the Chinese, they have big savings. So I think they have really suffered. So I think they really want change. So that's why now it goes back to the subject reform. I think, again, this is the best chance for reform. Like Tan Sri mentioned tadi, kalau now or never. So that's why I think the role of, for me, I call it royal intervention. COVID was divine intervention, but royal intervention. So now, for the past 60 years, I think this is the first time that the politicians are all at the lowest lah. I think they are powerless now. So now I think the king and the Raja should use the upper hand to push for this agenda, the reform agenda. And also I think when I first launched Rasuah Buses, the first, I think Sultan Selangor called me. Yeah. We talked for about 4 hours and he really supported this. So I'm sure, I think now this is the best opportunity for Raja to change Malaysia. Because I think what happened the past 56 years, betul-betul kerana apa ni, rasuah and salah guna kuasa. And to stop salah guna kuasa is only to reform. And this is the best time. So that's why I think, and sekarang I think orang Melayu suffering, orang muda frustrated. And if they can see that through the royal intervention, things change, they have better future. I think the image of the Raja-Raja will be back to those during 60s and the 70s. So that's why I again want to re-stress that the Raja-Raja must really take this opportunity to force the politician to take this route. Take it or leave it. And I think they are desperate, they will take it.
Yeah. I think that what we are seeing in Malaysia is politics at its worst.
Yes.
In my years of 40 years, 30 years, 40 years of covering politics, I think most of us have never seen anything like this. This is at its lowest of the worst. And that because the politicians are not trusted, are not believed by Rakyat, I agree with you that it is the rulers as the guardians of the Rakyat. They have to play a much bigger role to rein in these politicians. I mean, we hear talks like it is okay to have a corrupt Malay leader better than a non-corrupt non-Muslim leader. I mean, these are things that has been going on for a long time. Tan Sri Johan, I know that you're very strong on this kind of you show your disdain over this kind of narrative. Can you share with us your views on such kind of politics?
See, the saddest part of the whole thing is that some Malays believe that as long as you are Malay and Muslim, it is okay to be corrupt. As long as you are Malay and Muslim, it is okay to salah guna kuasa, to abuse your power. You see, that is a sad thing. I've been asking this question to all people that I interviewed, and every single one of them, and most of them are politicians. They say they don't believe in that. But unfortunately, some of them practice that. You see, but the whole idea is that I think as far as the Malays are concerned, you see, I think they too want change. You see, but of course, we have been playing this racial card and religious card over the years, and we have come to a stage whereby we are so divided. You see, our people are drifting apart. We are in a situation whereby race relation is a big issue in the country, which is a sad thing. You see, people might say it's double jeopardy, but there is more than that. You see, no other country in the world is facing the kind of problem that we are facing now. They are facing economic problem. They are facing COVID-19, but they are quite stable politically. You see, unless you talk about Afghanistan now, you know. But as far as other countries are concerned, we are in the worst position because during the COVID-19 pandemic, we don't even have a prime minister. You fancy that? You see, I think this is something that we have to look into. I mean, we must seriously do a lot of retrospective on this, you know, a lot of rethinking about this. But the most important thing, I always believe that, you see, we are a multiracial, multi-religious country. You see, and as you have pointed out correctly, the Malays should not be afraid of anything because they are 70% Bumiputra in the country. They are only 30% of others. So basically, and we are protected by the constitution, and we have a constitutional monarch, you see, and the monarch are Malays. The monarch are not Chinese. The monarch are not Indians. They are Malays. They will protect us as far as religion, race is concerned. So basically, there shouldn't be any worry. But if you carry on playing the racial and the religious card, I think we are not going anywhere. We are not going far. That is why I always believe and I always support whatever idea about reform. And when you talk about reform, it is not just about political funding. It is also reform in education, reform in race relation. You see, we need all that because we have come to a stage that we are groping in the dark. We have perfected the art of muddling through. You know, we are not quite sure what we are good at now. Is it not like it used to be? Is it? So and it get worse because of the political uncertainty, and nobody seems to be interested in anything now. You see, so when you have a situation whereby the economy is really sliding down, when you have a problem with the pandemic, and then to add salt to injury, we have a political situation that is almost unthinkable. You know, as you pointed out, for the last how many years we have never seen anything like this.
Yes.
You know? But this is happening to us. So you see, we have to ask ourselves, where do we go from here?
You know that, Johan, it's quite frightening because a rating agency has just give Malaysia zero economic growth. I was actually quite shocked, not exactly shocked, but saddened, or rather saddened by this kind of perception and rating that has given us to Malaysia.
Yeah.
Malaysia, of course, as you know, has always been too dependent on oil and palm oil. Manufacturing is here and there, but my fear is that as we continue to go through this mud, people will stay away from Malaysia. Why would anyone want to invest in Malaysia if we are such an unstable country? And for many years, Malaysia has got a reputation as a stable country. Dr. Husham says that we're going through this pandemic without a prime minister. I mean, we may even have a situation where we will be celebrating our 64th Merdeka Day without a real prime minister. We never know unless this is sorted out. So we are really in a bad situation where Malaysians must actually utilize all their resources, their intelligence, their strength to come together to actually save Malaysia. And it goes back to square one. We cannot have more of the same. We need real reforms, and not just the reforms that's promised by Tan Sri Muhyiddin, but reforms in the other cases. And as you mentioned, that the rulers will need to take the lead. How do you think that the rulers can play their role, because they are a constitutional monarchy with lines properly defined, but how can they play it without affecting their positions to push these these reforms a bit further? Sri?
See, what has happened the last few months has been quite unprecedented. I have never seen a royal reprimand the way it was done when what happened at the parliament. I don't have to rephrase that. I mean, I don't have to remind you of what actually happened, but that was happening. You see, so I guess the Malay rulers now realize that it is not about their interference. You know, I'm quite sure they know their what is expected of them. You see, the role that they should be playing as a constitutional monarch, and they are very sure of that. They know what they are supposed to do. But you see, under current circumstances, you see, people look up to them now. You see, and people were expecting them to make the right decision. Of course, they are not the one who will pick a prime minister just like that. You know, it is not their role. That should not be. I mean, it is in the constitution. It is clear what are the requirements or the prerequisite in putting a prime minister in place. You see, but as far as they're concerned, I think it is a chance for them, an opportunity for them, you see, to listen to the grouses of the rakyat, because the rakyat is fed up with what is going on. You see, I'm quite sure they are concerned. You see, I've never seen rulers as concerned as this ever in the history of Malaysia. I mean, they were perhaps they have never encountered such a situation. But the most important thing is, with what they have, the power that they have as a monarch, especially the Agong. See, this is an opportunity for them. And you must remember, when Tan Sri Muhyiddin took over, it was through if you like, the interference, not perhaps that's not the exact word, but basically it was the royal gesture that make it possible for Muhyiddin and his cabinet, his government to come in. And it is more so now. They are needed. You see, their wisdom, their guidance is very much very much needed now. I think it is an opportunity for them to make that important decision.
Dr. Hussam, when it comes to religious matter, specifically Islam, it is the jurisdiction and the role of the rulers in their respective state. But over the years, we have noticed that more and more of these policies and administration and powers have gone to the federal. And as a result, many of these rulers have also said that, look, why is it that some of these agencies gets even more bigger funding and get more bigger say, although it is a state matter? You're from Kelantan and Johan is from Johor, two important states. What is your comment on this religious matter of rulers taking back their rights?
Okay, to me, basically, it's not, I'm trying to justify what the federal government did, but I think there is reason why they created a lot of budget, because the budget was basically used to pay the salary of a lot of religious teachers, the ustaz at the mosque, because I think basically the religious authority in the various states, they are not that rich. So I think the government subsidized this. But anyhow, because it was not properly planned, the quality of religious teachers that were employed was below par. So I think the way religions has been taught to the Muslim has not reached to the level that is being expected. So that's why I think why we have people that say tak apalah, kalau dia tipu sikit-sikit pasal dia Melayu. Whereas in our religion is rasuah is haram. Cuma because sekarang contoh, the biggest rasuah in religion is the promise heaven. If you vote my party, you go to heaven. So I think that means orang-orang agama sendiri yang praktis rasuah. Ini yang menyebabkan orang Melayu jadi, but I think these are changing. These are changing. I think especially the young people, they learn the religion not through these ustaz anymore. They through international ustaz, then they read, because dulu Quran is being taught in Arabic and orang Melayu tak faham Arabic. So only the ustaz faham, and ustaz pun dia bukan faham penuh. Kan, is the one eye teaching the blinds. So that's why you get 6:30. So that's why the acceptance of macam Tan Sri mention tadi tentang orang Melayu, dia punya thinking kalau orang Melayu buat salah boleh terima, kan? Because the way Islam has been taught. So I think now things are changing. So I think it's high time when the politicians are at the lowest, the Sultan must take back its authority, so that the running of the religious authority must be run by professionals, not by the half-hearted ustaz.
Tan Sri Johan?
Yeah, I think what you are referring to is also the establishment of institutions like Jappkim, for instance. They are given a lot of budget, and there is a lot of issues pertaining to Jappkim, in the sense that they were saying, they are not doing the right thing, they should have done certain things. So I'm not expert in religious management. So basically, I subscribe to this idea that there must be a serious attempt to look into the role of institutions like Jappkim. One of the things that we are facing now is that I think we are not progressing as Muslim. You see, there is a lot of teaching, as Dato' Hisham has pointed out, that is making Muslim less progressive. They are some kind of, been enslaved by the old thinking. Whereas, you see, if you look at the history of Malay nationalism, the history of Malay religious teaching, even in the early 19th century, you have the kaum muda and the kaum tua. The kaum muda were representing the new reformists. These are the people who came back from Al-Azhar, and they came out with new ideas, believing that the old ways of teaching Islam is not correct. You see, and as a result of that, they came out with their own newspaper, that is Al-Iman. Al-Imam was edited by people like Sheikh Ahmad Al-Hadi. And these are the progressive Muslims that came back from Al-Azhar and believing that we have to do something about it. You see, the whole mindset, the whole mental construct of Muslim must be changed. That was in early 19th century. But you see, there is no real debate, there is no real discourse, or rather, there's no real conversation about the real teaching of Islam in Malaysia today. So religious matters is being left by the Ustad and the Ustazah, and they seem to be the people who knows about religion. So as a result of that, as Dato' Isham pointed out, you see, there is a lot of, I would say, there's a lot of misguided teaching, in the way that, we are not getting the real essence of Islam. And as a result of that, there is a lot of confusion among the Muslim, and there is a lot of people coming out, all kind of fatwas that is even confusing the Muslim. So basically, we are living in that kind of situation.
I have a final question before we end this program. Ahead of National Day, what kind of bipartisanship and what kind of reforms that you personally like to see? So we will head towards a democracy matang, mature democracy. Let's take this baby step and words towards a progressive Malaysia. Just give me a few lines of what you hope to see that Malaysians of different political leanings can actually find common grounds as a start to work together for Malaysia. Dato' Husham?
Okay, basically harapan saya orang-orang Melayu terutama kena realistik. Dasar sekarang, dasar terlampau contoh ketuanan Melayu, ini sebenarnya tidak membantu Melayu selama ini. Because saya rasa benda ni sudah di-hijack, pasal kalau kita balik kepada ajaran Islam yang betul. Ajaran Islam yang betul, jelas, maknanya seorang pemimpin mesti adil dan dalam ajaran Islam tak ada perkauman. It is based on fairness. Jadi kita berharap moving forward in future, apa-apa politics pun, kalau boleh saya rasa it should not be religion based or race based. It must be a Malaysian based. Kan? But we are still a Muslim country. Kan? Because in Islam jelas we are fair to everyone. And that, kalau begini saya rasa there's hope for everybody.
Tan Sri, pesanan terakhir.
I support 100% what Dato' Isham said, but I would like to add, see, we love this country. You always end your conversation with we love this country so much, because this is our country, and this is a special country. This is a country that we must bring it to the next level. We have no choice. You see, we have all the potentials. We have great people in this country. We have extremely talented people. You talk about our capabilities, about our innovation, about our creativity. There is no question about that. We can do that. You see, but what we need is a good general, someone to lead us. You see, whatever you say about Tun Mahathir for the last in his 22 years, at least he changed the landscape. He has turned Malaysia from a backwater nation into an industrialized nation, and of course he made mistakes. He has his flaws, he has his mistakes. I mean, he's just human, but he have done so much for the country. I mean, whatever our unhappiness about what they have done, I think we have to put it aside. We want a visionary. We want someone who can bring us to the next level, and someone who have this vision that we have to think as one. We have to think as a nation. You see, we understand that our diversity is our strength, but diversity should not be a reason to split us or to divide us. So on that score, I think, I believe that if with or without a prime minister, on our 31st August 2021, when we are celebrating our kemerdekaan or independence, I think every one of us should always think that we must build up Malaysia, and we must make sure that Malaysia will be prosperous, will be equitable, and more importantly, I think it is a Malaysia that is for everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen. With or without the politicians, Malaysia comprises of the people, the rakyat. We are all Malaysians, and diversity is our strength. We may be of different races, of different religion, but we are one. We are Bangsa Malaysia. With or without the politicians, we must push for reforms for a progressive and a better Malaysia. Good night and happy National Day. Thank you, Tan Sri.
Thank you.